There's a kind of arrogance that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't brag and it doesn't dominate the rooms. In fact, it can look quite relaxed, easygoing, and chill. It simply lowers the standard and then feels accomplished for clearing it. So, what do I mean by that? The quiet arrogance of low expectation shows up whenever someone expects very little from themselves but still assumes they deserve admiration. When basic effort is framed as exceptional character, when doing what's required is presented as going above and beyond. And you'll hear it in small phrases. At least I didn't cheat. At least I showed up. At least I'm honest. As if baseline decency is some kind of rare achievement. It sounds modest on the surface, almost humble. But there's something that's underneath the surface, an assumption that growth is optional and that comfort is sufficient proof of worth. Low expectations are protective. If you never push yourself, you never risk visible failure. If you never compete seriously, you never have to confront where you fall short. If you define enough as whatever feels easy, your ego stays intact. Some people quietly lower the criteria. They downplay ambition. They call discipline doing too much. They frame excellence as ego. They criticize people who stretch beyond the group's comfort level. And it all sounds quite real. Acting unimpressed by high standards can create the illusion of being above them, as if wanting more for yourself is naive or performative or desperate. But people who genuinely feel secure don't need to shrink the target. They don't need to resent others for aiming high, and they don't feel threatened by effort. They understand that standards are personal. You can choose a slower pace. You can choose a simpler life. But if that choice is rooted in the fear of being tested, eventually it's going to show. Because over time, low expectations calcify. They turn into ceilings. And then that frustration creeps in at the world, at other people, at anyone who seems to be moving faster. The real divide isn't between ambitious and relaxed. It's between intentional and avoidance. Are your standards aligned with what you truly want? Or are they designed to protect you from being uncomfortable? Lowering the bar can feel peaceful in the moment. It removes the pressure, it can remove the comparison, and it removes risk. But it also quietly removes growth. And eventually, the people who keep stretching move into rooms that you no longer recognize. And it's not because they're better than you, but because they're willing to demand more from themselves.